Tales of Kenzera Zao is an onion. Let me explain. When I say onion, I know there's a lot of different thoughts that may course through your minds. The first association to an onion for you may be that they smell, they make you cry, or that when you leave them in the sun they get all brown and start sprouting white. Alright, I realize this is just dialogue between Donkey and Shrek from the first movie. I'm wildin', but stick with me. Through all the comedy and ire delivered in that scene, Mike Myers utters 3 words that really set the groundwork for what I mean by an onion in this context. Onions have layers. Tightly stacked, well-developed, and consistently structured is what constitutes a healthy onion. And whether at the top layer or at the core, you're gonna know it's a damn good one. And a lot of games that I enjoy now embody this framework in one way or another. On top of being a fun time, these experiences provide continuity across many, if not all, of the elements of their game's DNA to make you feel what they're putting down in every move of a mouse or push of a button. They're compact, they're compelling, and they're connected. And it doesn't matter how many ways you dice it, you're gonna feel the spirit of the game at every touch point from start to finish. Alright, that was a solid explanation. Roll credits, that's all we had in the budget for this video. Thank you to everyone for coming out. Oh wait, before we roll credits, let's get back to why I wrote this in the first place and focus on Zao. At face value, this game is simply another Metroidvania about a boy's journey to get his father back from the god of death. But the deeper you go, you see it provides so much color and emotive styling to fully fit the criteria of what I laid down a bit ago. So sit back, relax, and take a trip with yours truly as we peel back the layers to show why Tales of Kenzera Zao is a gaming onion. Alright, before we really get rolling, allow me 8 seconds to get this off of my chest. This main menu music is absolute PCP in a speaker. As a Kingdom Hearts fan, I fell to my knees and I was sitting down. It's so good. Oh my god! Phew. Okay, now we're taking this from the top down. So the most obvious place to start is where you first gain an impression of an onion, before you can even make contact and deeper connection with it. Let's begin with what you can see, what you can hear, what you can smell. Okay, scratch the smell part. If you can actually smell the game, you either got that AI smell box for video games or you need medical attention ASAP. Why are you watching this, son? Get up! Zao does really well to present a lot of dynamism and pop in their visual pieces up front, and then Shadowbox just underneath to help support the lower layers of the game. Now, I'll admit I'm not the foremost expert on art, but I was really enjoying what was on the plate. The hints of Afrofuturism right off the bat helped set the tone with some really bright color schemes in conjunction with the mix of nature and technology as you looked over the skyline of Amani, the city that one of the main characters, Zuberi, resides in. From there, we go into the rabbit hole that is the story left behind by Zuberi's late father, and the art direction opens up to the time of Zao. It's more traditional by nature due to the inspirations the development team pulls from, but it's as stunning as what we saw prior. The hues of the world are as vibrant as the playable sections are varied, and we are thrust into an array of biomes to absorb. From the canopied treetops of nature's crown and the wildwood, to the sun-dried locales of Mount Ichoka and the Deadlands. The visuals really had a lot of pop for me, from the environment all the way down to the distinct build-outs of each character, weapon, and interactive piece, and they all help deliver on a grander scheme the player is in for, which I'll talk about later. As we move from the eyes over to the ears, I was impressed that the level of quality didn't diminish from the execution of sights to the sounds, and it actually got better in my opinion. Listen, don't make me press that button to hit that main menu theme again, cause you don't get it! They absolutely sprinkled illegal substances in this! So I feel pretty confident in saying the score and sound design for Zao is among the game's best traits. And I need to decide who composed the score, the Surgeon audio teams, and an array of instrumentalists, orchestras, choirs, and more gave this entire game a Zenkai boost with the music. The game's score has been positioned to reflect a clash of time to not only amplify your experience through Zao, but also create that through line to connect Zuberi's presence in the world as well. And you feel it all, through all the voices and chants, the modern synths and hi-hats, and a healthy mix of instrumentation between more of the orchestral pieces our ears are used to, and traditional pieces that culturally inform the game in many ways. The music is masterfully done, and it cannot be understated how well the general sound design adds that extra oomph to every jump, attack, and encounter that we see in Zao's journey. Isolate the sound of Zao and it justifies itself as a character in its own right, but pair it with all the adjacent elements in this experience, and it effectively shines a light on everything it touches. Speaking of touch, let's get another step closer and break down what this onion is directly connecting you with. So let's run through the hands-on gameplay. I touched on it briefly, but this game follows the influences of Ori and Castlevania Symphony of the Night to be a fully fledged Metroidvania, with all the platforming, exploration, and combat to boot. That first portion of platforming, to me, was the most challenging portion of the gameplay. There was really good progression with tools and powers to up your platforming game, but none of it was there to particularly handhold you, and I appreciated that. When you think of the shaman challenges across the map, there was a big presence of frustration and eventual delight, for some, no shade, as you made your way through those tests. Now don't go telling everyone this information, but I kept on dying on all the pointy things. One thing the platforming did was teach my impatient ass to be a bit calmer and show some grit to get on the other side. Beyond jumping all over the place, what you were jumping to in terms of exploration was solid to me. There was incentive to go anywhere you physically could with all the collectibles and upgrades scattered across the map, and with me being the underground champ of stopping all of my story progress until I found the little collectibles in one area, I felt right at home. Grouped in with the platforming and exploration, the combat of Zao rounds out the gameplay offering pretty nicely. The marquee feature of combat is the use of the sun and moon masks that were passed down to Zao. Where the moon mask excels in ranged attacking, the sun mask is more close quarters action. They each have their own distinct feels and skill trees, but the combat encourages you to employ both and switch often to get an advantage and stay on top of the enemies that you're facing. The game's given an open note test where you approach combat how you know best. For me, it would depend on the situation, but I typically lead with the moon mask to scope the scenery out. And then get aggressive in the sun mask as I isolated enemies I wanted out of the picture earlier. When you fully get into the flow of things, it feels like a dance as you shift across battle stages, and the hits and combo capacity felt very impactful across the game. I keep coming back to the word punch, because the combat really makes you feel the inputs. Whether you're launching an enemy to get some air combos or pulling off a special beam-esque cannon or fire vortex, it all had an enjoyable weight to it for me, which made my combat experience that much more enjoyable. So we got a little hands-on time with the gameplay itself, so now let's shed a little light on probably one of the most prominent pieces of this onion that we get in touch with: the culture. It's no secret that the world of the game is heavily inspired by the Bantu cultures that originate from Africa. Just to give you some context on this, there are over 400 different ethnic groups that live across 27 plus countries that speak roughly 400 to 700 distinct languages that comprises of over 400 million people. That's a lot of Bantu, y'all. It is a vast hotbed of cultural richness that only recently started to be showcased in mainstream media with projects like Black Panther in 2018. And the way we get in direct contact with some perspective on things across the Bantu culture here is just fantastic. There's literally a metric ton of references sprawled out across the game, and to me, the most prominent ones lie in the characters themselves. Zao himself represents real-life Nganga, or spiritual healers and shamans that guide and cure supernatural things that are depicted with a few different names in Bantu culture, which include Nganga. Death is often personified, as well as depicted as a line between the lands of life and the deceased, and we see the former illustrated in the most upfront way with Kalunga, the god of death. And almost every monster and enemy we encounter represents major folklore and mythos told for countless generations in Bantu regions. Y'all have every right to powerbomb me in the comments if I butcher these names. As a matter of fact, comment powerbomb if you think I'm butchering these names in the following sections, but enemies like the Tokoloshe are small and mischievous trickster spirits that originated from Zulu stories. Kongamoto, who were the pterodactyl-looking birds in the game, are based on real tales from the Congo, Zambia, and Angola about boat breakers, creatures that were the world's first crash-out artists slash phantom food tactors if you didn't give them a piece of what you found from fishing in the river.
If you did not feed them some of your catch, it meant trouble. Boat breakers.
Boat breakers?
Boat breakers.
And the Adze are based in Ewe folklore around Ghana and Togo that told of vampiric figures that possess humans, change into the form of fireflies, and, not so randomly, share the same name of an ancient cutting tool which looks oddly similar to the pincers of the Adze in the game. The three main bosses of the game follow suit in drawing from the depths of Bantu stories. The Impundulu is quite literally translated as lightning bird from Zulu folklore. Sightings and stories depict a large bird with the ability to summon thunder and lightning and are typically passed down from one witch to their daughters, which loosely fits to what the game was illustrating. The Gagorib is a demon stemming from Bushman groups in southern Africa, which tell of creatures that built deep pits near their lairs and got travelers to throw stones back and forth with them until someone fell in. But it's told the boys had the Call of Duty mods on them and could just automatically deflect the stones that were thrown at them. And the Kiki-Aon scared the shit out of me, so it gets no play in this house. Alright, fine. Kiki-Aon, or a soul cannibal as notably depicted by the Bambara people of West Africa, is an owl-like cryptid of the forest lands that can move between the physical and dream realms to hunt their prey. Kiki-Aon apparently preferred to ambush targets and catch them slipping, which was well illustrated in the game itself, as the biggest twist was right around our full encounter with that spirit. All I'm saying is Wan Chi Tong better tell his cousin to fall back. This game does a fantastic job in delivering context on Bantu culture and imbuing it in every crevice of the game. You feel it in every character you engage with, every drop of water and environmental piece you see, all the way down to how we gain collectibles. With such an underutilized gold mine of cultural expression and storytelling on global stages, the delivery of Bantu stories here helped to open Pandora's box further in the best way to show how great depiction of those tales can be. Now that was a good layer, and trust me, we'll get back to that in a second, but let's get deeper and get in tune with the layers that we really feel in the story and thematic execution of Zao. On the surface, the story is straightforward as previously described. Boy loses his father, boy barters with death itself to guide 3 wayward spirits in exchange for his father to return. Simple stuff, right? But it's not all about death. Death sets the foundation for the engine of the narrative and what the core of this game is all about. And it's about the many faces that grief speaks through along the journey. Looking at the dope dialogue we got from the cast for starters, we were pulled through so many emotional states that reflected the volatile experience that grief is.
I am trying to make you see sense, Zao. You are wasting your time trying to stop the inevitable.
The inevitable? That is your problem. You only see the end. Death for all. The inevitable.
From one moment there's sadness about loss, and in the next there's eagerness, even defiance, in trying to make haste, which forced a mistake that could have been costly. The feelings of betrayal, guilt, anger, frustration, contempt, cheerfulness, confusion, and more were riddled all through the cast performances with no major order of appearance, because that's how grief can be for any of us. When you think about the progression of the story mixed in with that dialogue, there's so many moments that flash the mirror in Zao's face and prompt reflection to emphasize the emotional ebbs and flows grief pushes people through. Liana's tale of trying to play with the Impundulu again reflects the anxiety parents and children may feel in a time of loss or transition. To Sabulana, Kiki-Aon pushed fear to the forefront, and in particular Zao facing and quelling falsehoods that he failed his father and friends. Gagorib most notably puts anger center stage through Bomani's son's arc of self-hatred and rage over death taking his father, ending in finding solace in his loss through the help of Bomani's last words and Zao's efforts. From the turmoil of the spirits to the tail end of the journey, Zao came to grips with his loss and found peace as he drew closer to the land of the dead. No more anger, no more fear, no more sorrow. Everything he needed to accept the loss of the final boss, his Baba, he gained through guiding others. Every moment, every conversation, every step of his journey were reflections in the waterfall to guide him through grief and bring him to these simple truths. He loved his father loved him. And although his father's story was done, Zao's own life story and his role for others is just beginning, and he's ready to embrace it. So from the core feeling of the game's narrative all the way out to its presentation, it's super solid. All of them can stand in isolation and you can see the quality. But what makes these pieces, these layers, a gaming onion is how effectively they connect and inform each other to amplify the entire game and ultimately communicate to us. Even as I wrote and recorded this damn video, it was so difficult to speak on layers in isolation, because every part of this game is so compact and intertwined with one another. At least in my head, I saw a good number of things that point to this. Think of the colors used to reflect the emotional states of the game that partnered with contextualized gameplay sections such as running from your fear until you face it within the Kiki-Aon fight. Think about the Gagorib stone throwing abilities and encounter arena being a deep pit in the mountain and how its folklore easily fit into both gameplay mechanics and environmental design. Think of feeling overwhelmed spatially in moments like in the elevator to Ikakaramba to echo emotional overwhelming and grief. Think of the combat feeling like a dance. And now think of the cultural roots in Dambe or African boxing being a reference for that combat. Think of the cultural significance of waterfalls being placed everywhere visually to reference the Kalunga line in Bantu stories, which can be interpreted as death being with you across the game, transitioning across life to death in the journey, and from one area on the map to another geographically. Think of griots serving their cultural purpose of storytelling and also being a vehicle to bring relevant emotional points to the journey. Think about the general level of synchronization between all layers of the game, as evidenced most notably in the final boss fight. Not only did Kalunga's moveset contain attacks from each great spirit, the music contained motifs from each great spirit's songs to drive home how all the emotions seen before like anger, fear, and anxiety can rush back in the final steps of Zhao's path to accepting loss. This game is so tightly woven together to me that you can't tap into one layer of it without being enriched by the others. It spares no seconds and wastes no ground to ensure each moment of the game gives you something to cherish. From the atmosphere you see and hear, to the culture and combat you touch, down to what the experience makes you feel. True compactness in games and thoughtful execution to make the sum vastly greater than its parts is something I love to see. For a studio that has just made their very first game, I'm super impressed with Surgeon Studios and their ability to create quality through their efficiency. All categories of this game felt like they came from a thoughtful place, and that translated to my experience playing Zhao. You know, one thing I found fitting about this game is the A symbol, which marked the start of many shaman challenges on the map and also symbolized greatness. It's seen all over the game's environments and menus, dialogue, characters, etc. After my time playing, it's apparent to me that greatness runs through this production and exudes in the final product. I hope we've only seen the start of Tales of Kenzera and stories from this world, because a good precedent's been set here. It brought fun, it brought culture, it brought feeling, and it brought it all together beautifully. So it's safe to say that Tales of Kenzera Zhao is a gaming onion. Hey yo, hope you, yes you, are doing well and hope you enjoyed the video. If you're liking the content, don't be afraid to sub and support how you see fit. And if you want to hear more about layers and depth, I gotta point you to a little piece I did about how deep nostalgia has become for all of us and how much has been abused today in gaming and beyond. Well, that's all we got for this one, and we're heading home, but don't trip. We will see you in the next one.